All right, people, let's start. We're right on time. It's 10 to 3. We have 20 minutes, and we're gonna explore our experience and the experiences from my customers and my team and their customers on going passwordless. So you've heard Microsoft talk a lot about Microsoft and their passwordless journey towards, I don't know, something like FIDO2, and you've probably heard that, and you think, so what does he do? What does it look like? How does it feel? And we've actually had a couple of customers that are further on their route that have agreed to us to let us share those experiences. So today what we're going to talk about is why passwords are bad, and I think we can all agree they are pretty bad, but there's some numbers about that too. I'm going to tell you why MFA isn't the answer, but it's the best thing we've got today. And then of course we're going to talk about getting rid of passwords using Windows Hello for Business and FIDO2. And then we're going to talk about your options today. So where can you go and what does that take to get there? So let's start with why passwords are bad. So when you look at it from an independent research point of view, what you'll see is that passwords are, well, you know, they've been around for like 40 years since the mainframe era, and they haven't changed since then. They only gotten longer. Now you can have all special characters in them, you couldn't do that at first, but they're still passwords. If you cut one, you can still replay it somewhere else. And there's no feeling, there's nothing that will tell you that that's happening at the moment that it's happening. That's what multi-factor authentication for the first time is actually offering us. And then of course passwords are in the way. So colleagues forget their passwords. If someone goes on holiday, or if someone goes on maternity leave, or someone just takes a sabbatical, they usually come back and say, you know what, I was required to change my password just before I left, but I can't remember it. I even have a colleague who can't remember his own password every Monday morning. I wish I had weekends like that, right? And then of course if we look at the numbers, then 81% of all digital incidents last year were related to weak or stolen passwords. And 20% of our budgets, our IT budgets, we spend on service desk and other solutions for people to have a password they can type in and make it work. So if I would have to summarize this slide, I would say passwords are the stupidest thing ever. But luckily, we have some solutions, right? If you don't want to have a password, we can do smart cards. Smart cards are really cool. Well, let me tell you, they haven't been cool for the last 20 years. I think they've never been cool. Because if you look at most smart card solutions, what you see is by default, smart cards have a static NTLM hash. If you've ever looked at authentication in Active Directory and stuff like that, and you see the word NTLM hash, you have to know that malicious attackers these days, they're not after your passwords. They don't need your passwords. If they have to hash your password, they're already in. They don't have to do all sorts of cracking to get it back or colliding to get it back to that real pristine clear text password. They don't do that. Ain't nobody got time for that. They just use the hash. And if you use a smart card, well, there you go, buddy. It's always the same NTLM hash. It's static. And federation, of course, is cool, but there's one thing that federation won't do in any environment. Federation will never offer you interactive logon. You still have to log on with a password, for instance, to do single sign-on. You still have to do sign-on once to avoid all those other sign-ons. And the really fun thing that we now have in our industry that I'm really fond of is multi-factor authentication, because everybody is repeating the same words over and over again. Multi-factor authentication makes you secure. Multi-factor authentication will reduce your risk with 99.99% of getting breached in Azure AD. 99, so once every 100,000 tenants, it happens. There's 17.5 million tenants in Azure AD today. It happens quite often. And you know why? Because people either get prompt fatigue. Oh, it's another MFA, let's do it. You know, there's some background process, some app in the background that I forgot, and it needs MFA again. You know what? I'll just say, it's okay, let's do this. And one of the problems that is on the rise is MFA phishing. So just a show of hands in this room, who has had their specific phone number for their mobile phone for a period longer than 2 years? So if you haven't raised your hand, then what you'll see is that this trick might work. This is someone that sends you a text and says, you know what, this used to be my phone number, and now I have some app that I never use, but now all of a sudden I have to use it for whatever reason, and I don't have the phone number again. You have it, and I know that because I just texted you. Could you be a good sport and help me out? Sure, buddy. I'm a good person. I will help you out. Boom. You're breached. You got MFA, you know. You were not one of the 99.99%. Still you got breached because this is the stuff that people pull on us. This is the arms race that we are in today. And it gets worse because we do cloud. I heard Melanie from the Identity from Microsoft in the session on day 2 at 9 a.m. I heard her say that she logged on with her email address like 2 times. An email address. Well, it's not entirely true. It's a user principal name, but Microsoft's recommendation is to have your user principal name and your passwords and your SIP address to be the same. So it feels like an email address. We use that all the time. Your colleagues use them all the time for personal stuff. If you look at the Ashley Madison hack, and I know that's been a while, but there were 17 accounts in the Ashley Madison hack that ended with email addresses ending in .mil. Those are military addresses. This stuff happens. These kind of breaches happen. This kind of breaches happen often and more often and more often. They're on the rise. There's 45% more data leaks in 2017 than there was in 2016. And in 2016, and these are the latest numbers, unfortunately, I don't have them for 2017, 1 in 14 phishing attacks was successful. 1 in 14 phishing attacks. That's password phishing, not even MFA phishing. I think MFA phishing would be more successful even. And even though we're here in the US, and even though you have nothing to do with Europe, you never go to Europe, you have no office in Europe or whatever, GDPR still applies to you because Microsoft has made a decision to apply GDPR worldwide over all its services. And GDPR it's pretty funky. I'm from the Netherlands. I love it. I have the right to be forgotten. I have the right to just access all my history for a specific service when I want to. And the first time they have to even give it to free to me. Second time they can charge money, but the first time it's free. So imagine that. You're a malicious attacker. I'll give you some time to get in your really malicious mood. Ready? Cool. So you're a malicious attacker, and you get the password of something that you really, of someone that you really, really hate. And you think, you know what? I'm gonna log on to Facebook as that person, and then I'm gonna mess with all his or her friends. So what do? The first thing you do in Facebook, and that's automated, there's a button that says, give me all my history. Tell me who that person has had conversations with on what subject. Tell me who he phoned with. Tell me who he's messaged in WhatsApp. Tell me everyone he has in his WhatsApp contacts. That's all there in Facebook. And then you can say, Oh, that's an interesting discussion. You know what? I'll set up a new discussion right there, but then mess them up and say, you know what? I knew I said that, or I know I said that in 2014, but I changed my mind. I don't like you anymore. Please go away. You can really mess up someone's life. And if you can do that personally, malicious attackers can do that on an organizational level too, with great ease. Thank you, GDPR. So what we want to do is we want to get rid of passwords. We don't want to get rid of GDPR. I wish we could, but at least we can get rid of passwords, right? And Microsoft has great marketing material on that. And they'll say, you know what, if you want to get rid of passwords, there's only 4 steps that you can do. And I was like, yeah, we're going on to a journey. You know, we got a ring, we got to go through Mordor to a mountain of fire and throw a ring in there. Oh, heck, it's only a 4-stop journey. It's not even hard. Well, not in terms of marketing materials. So what Microsoft is telling us, you know what, let's start on the left, and they say deploy Windows Hello, so you have all these password replacing options. And then, if you're ready, go tackle your apps. If they use a password, if they're not doing federation or something else that's funky, you have to replace them. You know how long it takes to replace a business critical app? On average, 8 years. If you're a government, on average, 80 years. So that's a long journey. Then you have to transition into a passwordless environment where passwords are no longer the norm. So that gets you as an organization into a culture shift. You know how hard culture shifts are? Don't even get me started on that one. And then on the other one, the 4th one, that's an easy one again, luckily. So that's just erasing all passwords from the identity provider. If you made it all the way to the right, the only thing you have to do is to clear the password attribute in Active Directory, and you're done. It sounds so simple if you see it on a slide. This is going to take up most of our time if you're in identity and access management for the coming 5 to 50 years, depending on your organization, your vertical, and your culture. Well, someone just asked, so this morning someone asked me, you know, or I overheard a conversation on breakfast. They said, you know what, this cloud thing, it really scares me because I don't know if I'm going to have a job in 5 years' time. If you're in identity access management, no worries. We're just going to do this, you know. We'll be agents of change. Or whatever. So let's look at that first tile. So Windows Hello for Business. So it's really fun. If you have a Windows 10 device, and it's been there for quite some time already, if you Azure AD join that device, you'll automatically get enrolled into Windows Hello for Business. But it's only available for Windows 10. And it's funny because there's a Windows Hello companion device framework. So of course, if you have a non-Surface device, so you don't have what Apple calls Face ID, if you don't have a fingerprint reader, yeah, you know, Windows Hello for Business isn't that sexy. It's just a pin. But if you do, or if you work around with some other devices, then you can really make it work. There's a couple of devices that work with that Hello companion device framework. There's the Authenticator app, for instance. And that's all the stuff that Microsoft is giving us. This works with YubiKey too. So how is Windows Hello secure? No, it's a PIN, right? How is a 6-digit PIN? That's a default value, by the way. You can change that up all the way to, I think, 72. How much fun would that be, right? So if you're ever scared that your boss is going to fire you the next day, just bump his password or his PIN length all the way up to 72 and make him change it. That'll keep him busy for 2 days. But Windows Hello for Business is multi-factor authentication, and that PIN is only for that device. So if you shoulder surf that PIN, and if you get to remember those 72 numbers, then you can just go to another device and try them out, but they will never work. It's the same with your fingerprint. It's enrolled to that device. You can't just go to another device and say, you know what, I'm going to try the same finger because I don't know, I just chopped it off. I'm going to try it on another device. Won't work. Won't work, even if it's still warm. Won't work. So it's bound to that device. And it's two-factor authentication because it is tied to that device. It only will work on that device. So if you access resources that are protected with multi-factor authentication, you no longer get prompt. You already got MFA. Why would you do it again? Well, there's a couple of smart guys that says, yeah, but I can force a certain MFA method through ADFS. Yeah, don't do that. Because it gets really annoying if you think that you can do just any MFA method, but it turns out that you have to do a PIN, but you keep doing something else. Then ADFS will just tell you, yeah, good luck, you just did MFA, now let's do it again, until we get to that claim that was specified. There's no correct error handling on that scenario, and I don't think there ever will be. So don't do that. And if you have a device without TPM, then you can change that up. So you can change all the settings for Windows Hello and Windows Hello for Business through group policy or Intune. This has been one of the nicest experiences that we had with two customers, and I'll tell you why. Because the first customer said, I have a couple of devices that are not Active Directory domain joined, and I got a couple of them that are just Azure AD joined only. And when I apply group policy, they don't get applied to the Azure AD joint devices. Yeah, that's how it's supposed to work. So how do we do that? Well, you gotta buy Intune licenses for that. Okay. And then there was another customer that says, okay, so I got Intune and I got a policy there, and it's really strict, and I got group policy, and it's a bit relaxed. So which of the two is getting applied? Well, the answer is simple. They both get applied. But which one is right? So Intune always wins on group policy. So if you are going to do it right, do it in Intune and not through group policy. There's a couple of deployment scenarios. There's Azure Active Directory Cloud Only, hybrid, and there's on-premises with Active Directory. This is easy. This is easy. This is freakingly hard to do these days. The requirements to do that on premises only is ridiculous. And that's why Microsoft is not telling you during this event. They just keep telling you, yeah, you need something with ADFS. Well, you need the 2016 farm behavioral level even. And then they say, you know what? Windows Hello is really easy because you get all these methods. Yeah, well, you know what? That doesn't work. That doesn't work. You all saw the demo with the Microsoft Authenticator app on the Apple Watch, right? That didn't work on stage. So typically end users will use one method, but you can define that they have to use two methods, for instance, PIN and MFA, and options can be hidden. And if you want to make it more secure, since Windows 10 1703, you can also have second unlock options. So you can say, you know what, I want you to pair your Bluetooth phone to the device, and I want it to be near, and I want it to be on an IP address or IP address range that is controlled by us. And then you can do all that, and otherwise you can't. So that's new since Windows 10 1703. Then there's the out-of-the-box option. It's Fast Identity Online, it's an ecosystem, and it's not just Microsoft. There's loads and loads and loads of organizations in there, and they only want to do open standards. Open standards are great because it always works. I just I think it was July 8th, that the new 502 open standard was ratified, and we now have the client to authenticator protocol, and we have Web of N, and it's a W3C specification. So how does this work? Well, we're not doing Kerberos anymore. We're not doing NTLM anymore. We're not doing signing anymore. We're just using public key, private key interchange. That's it. You know, if cryptocurrency can use it, so can we, right? Let's do it right. So that's all you have to do. And you have a key pair for each identity provider and each application. So even if your key is stolen, even if the private key is derived in any other way through a collision or whatever, you only get access to that one application or that one IDP. I don't care that much. So currently you can do FIDO2 with Azure Active Directory. That's a private preview. If you want that, you can ask your TAM, or you can go to the booth from Azure Active Directory, just at the center of the expo, on the other side from here. And it's a private preview. They're not quite ready for public preview yet, because the admin experience is, well, let's put it nicely, it's horrible. And that's nice. And of course, you can also do WebAuthn these days with GitHub and any other Google app that you use. So Google is really on board for FIDO2, and they're also part of the FIDO Alliance, just like Microsoft. So what's your options today? So if you want to go passwordless, really easy for most of your resources, what you can do is you can use FIDO2 with one of these keys, or one of those blue keys that Yubico have. They have a booth, I think like 3 booths that way. They'll show you how you can do that. So you can do client to authenticated protocol like that, and then those web-based resources, you can do with FIDO2 as well. That's where the web authentication standard is for. Or you can still use plain old federation. How cool is that? If you do Windows Hello for Business, you can still use federation with Azure Active Directory or ADFS to any web-based resource. So what's missing here is everything, of course, that is non-web. How do you do non-web? That's the enormous pile of legacy that we still have to get rid of. For all the funky stuff, for all the web-based stuff, these are your options. So to wrap this up, because I'm 2 minutes over time, and that's not a really big problem. I told you why passwords are bad. I told you why multi-factor authentication isn't the answer, but it's the best thing we have today. We've talked about getting rid of passwords, and we've talked about your options to go passwordless today, realistically. Now, if you like this session, then please evaluate it. And with that, I would like to say thank you very much for attending, and have a great Ignite.